Hey everybody, I want to do a quick demo on the SQL Safe feature called Virtual Database, which I think is very magical. It really is magic. It's one of the really most interesting and coolest ways that you can deal with a SQL Server database backup and restore scenario that I've come across in my 20-year history working with SQL Server. And the beautiful thing about it is it doesn't actually restore anything. So it doesn't take time because you're not restoring anything. It doesn't take space because you're not restoring anything. But the end result really gives you a full functioning database that you can work with and play with and do, frankly, whatever you want with it. There's a lot of different use cases for SQL Safe Virtual Database. And I think they're more common than just restoring a database. And what I mean by that is, yes, you have a production database, it gets corrupted, it goes down, and all of a sudden you need to restore that thing. That's an emergency. You need to restore the database. It's not that common. What is more common is I need to restore the database from last week so I can look at the store procedure. We need to refresh a development environment so that that dev guy has something to work with. We need to restore a database so we can do a check DB. There's a lot of reasons why people restore databases, and it isn't because they need to replace a broken DB in production. It's because they need to do something else with it. And that's where virtual database really comes in. So the end result of a virtual database is kind of designed to be temporary. It's not a permanent fix. If you are running into that first scenario where you have a disaster and you need to recover, then a traditional restore, or maybe even better with SQL Safe, we have a feature called Instant Restore. I know my colleague Tep did a video on that earlier. That is probably what you're looking for. But if you're in the kind of space of I need to restore this database to go build a report, or do some light dev, or do a comparison, or just see what something looked like, right? That's where virtual database comes into play. So the way it works is I have a database that's been backed up. So in this case, it's a database called perfmon. It's about a 10 gig database, and I need to go do a check DB, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on that database name and say mount virtual database. And it's going to open up a wizard. Which instance do I want to mount this virtual database on? We'll just put it on itself, which is dev2. And then the next screen, where is the backup file that you're going to use to mount the virtual database? Well, we have a repository in SQL Safe that knows where all the backups are. So I'm just going to let it figure it out for me. But I could browse the file system if I wanted to. And then the pink bar is a full, the blue bars are T-logs, the orange bar is a differential. In this example, we'll just go with the full, so I can be really clear as to what's happening, but you could do a combination of T-logs and differentials and fulls if you wanted to. So we're taking the 2 a.m. full is what we're going to do. And then on the next screen, what do we want to call it? Well, we're going to call this VDB1. So perfmon database name underscore VDB virtual database, we'll call it 1. And it's going to create those in a directory called C program files IDERA, VDB metadata, instance name, and these are the files. Hit next and mount. So notice it doesn't say restore, it says mount. It is done. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this a couple more times. So perfmon mount virtual database. Let's go back and make sure we take the same exact one. So just the full. We'll call it VDB2. And we're going to do it again. Mount virtual database. The cool thing about this is, and kind of what I'm going to show you, is that I'm creating 3 different databases, at least as far as SQL Server is concerned. There's going to be 3 different databases created, and they're all going to be independent of each other. So when I go out to Management Studio and I go look at this instance, let me refresh it. There's going to be 3 virtual databases, VDB1, 2, and 3. They are all completely independent of each other. So let's say I have 3 developers. One of them works on VDB1, another on VDB2, another on VDB3. They're not stepping on each other's toes. That being said, they are sharing the exact same data. What I mean by that is if I go look at the folder where these virtual databases exist, and I go look in that folder, actually, hold on the right server, yes. Where did I create those? Oh, VDB metadata, that's why. So Here they are. There's three virtual databases in here, VDB1, 2, and 3. These are the data files. If you look at the size, it looks like it's the full data file, 12 gigs or so. In reality, if I though look at the properties of that directory, it says that there's 35 gigs worth of data, but it's only taking up 12 megabytes worth of space. So I didn't actually restore anything. These virtual databases are pointing to a backup file that's living on my network, meaning that all of the data in these three virtual databases are going to be exactly the same, but they're yet independent. How are they independent? Well, each one has their own respective virtual database data file that we just looked at. So, for example, if I go into VDB1 and I go, I don't know, maybe we'll delete a table. So the core weight types table, let's delete that out of VDB1. Uh-oh, well, they're all sharing the same data source. Did that just break VDB2 and 3? No. So if I go look at VDB2, tables, you still have core weight types. If I go run a select, we still have the data. So another really important aspect to understand about virtual databases is if we modify them like we did on VDB1 by deleting that table, we write that modification to those sparse files that are here, right? So we modified this sparse file. We did not modify the other two. Therefore, they still are reading the same data from the backup. So we never modify the backup. The backup integrity is always there. It's read only. The database itself, though, can be modified through any type of interaction with, DDL, DML, etc. Even like a CheckDB, right? Can all be done on those virtual databases. Now, is it going to perform as well as a normal database? No. Why not? Well, there's two reasons. One is virtual databases are generally compressed backup files. So there's some decompression that has to take place for me to get the data back on that select. And in my example, and I think in most examples, it's also living on the network. So you're probably not going to have the same performance as you'll have with a traditional database. That being said, if your traditional database is 2 terabytes and you're trying to go in and look at a stored procedure from last week, well, that could take hours because you have to restore the database. You have to go find the 2 terabytes to restore it to go look at that stored procedure. So that 30-second query that you're going to run, open up Management Studio, run the query, go look at it, that might take a minute or two, is going to take hours because you have to go through the restore process to get to the point where you can look at it. On the other hand, with a virtual database, seconds you have access to it to go do what you need to do. We have an OLR feature within SQL Safe, and it does leverage some of this virtual database technology to get the OLR database created. Frankly, I don't use it that much, the OLR feature, because virtual database gives me a better representation of the objects in the database that I want to do the OLR with, and then I can just script the data out that I need into my production database if I need to. So tons of different use cases. It really is a magical solution. It's the best in the business for doing this type of thing. And I very much appreciate your time. If you haven't downloaded SQL Safe and done some testing and trials with it, I do encourage that. You can go out to the website, download a free trial. It's good for 2 weeks, 15 servers out of the box. And we'd love to talk to you about it. So thanks for your time again. I hope you have a good rest of your day.